Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're very excited to have Milos Markovic, CBT, joining us this afternoon to give us an overview of Henry Schein's prosthetic design services. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. We will leave about 10 to 15 minutes at the end of today's presentation for Q&A. So if you have any questions or comments that come up, please enter them during the chat, and they will be addressed at the end of the presentation. So at this point, I'll pass it off to Milos.
Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to spend time today with you to discuss a couple of considerations for outsourcing designs and manufacturing. And I want to thank Zahn Dental for giving me the opportunity to do this. Just to jump right in, I can tell you a little bit about myself. My name is Milos Markovic. I come from a long family of dentists, and I graduated medical high school for dental technology in Eastern Europe, Serbia. After coming to the United States in 2006, I studied at New York City College of Technology, Department of Restorative Dentistry. After that, I got my CDT certification, and I followed my passions to get my first job actually at Denmat, where we worked on Snap-on Smiles. I worked with Dr. Lightong, the inventor of Snap-on Smile, when we kind of brought over that brand from New York City over to California, and we kind of tried to expand on it, especially when it came to converting it from the injection molding technique over to the milling aspect of things. So it was a very interesting project. And now, of course, Zerlux Cetal Ltd is exclusively approved for Snap-on Smile that Schein also distributes as well. After that, I decided to come back to New York, and I worked for Crown and Bridge Lab, and I also worked at Nobel Biocare. Here, I helped them start their scan and design service that focused on abutments and crowns. That service runs still strong to this day. It was one of the greatest experiences of my life to be there. And so we really focused on the digital aspect of things and expanding the offering that with such a high demand for digital these days. And then I wanted to shift my focus a little more on the clinical side. I wanted to experience the surgeries, the conversions, the nitty gritty of what goes on in a surgical office and a restorative office. So I worked at Advanced Dentistry of Scarsdale, where we worked on problem solving daily on some of these really complex restorative cases that really brought kind of the lab aspect and the clinical aspect kind of together for me. So I was very grateful for that. And then today, I work as a director of CAD/CAM and implantology at Aurora Digital Technology Center, formerly known as CMC. We recently moved from Colorado to New York. So here we really try to support our lab partners. That's our main mission, to help labs grow, to problem solve for labs through manufacturing and design, which is why this presentation kind of came together. I would like to share what goes into decision making, or what makes good manufacturing or design, and all the considerations that you might want to have when choosing a good manufacturing or design service, and all these little aspects and challenges that the labs are facing today. So among all the questions and concerns that we hear, the main one is that's facing labs today, and I broke it down into several sections, but it is general labor, talent, and availability and cost, right? The demand for production is high. There's simply a significant shortage of labor out there, which is why outsourcing has become such an important decision for many labs. And in order for them to do it right, it needs to be, all these aspects need to be considered. So why do we have this labor shortage? Why is it difficult to attain talent and labor? So whether that's going to be CDTs, denture technicians, just general workers that have dental lab experience. Well, the first thing is education. There aren't that many certified dental technology programs left in the country. Hopefully there will be more in the future. But to give an example, when I used to go to City Tech, where I got in New York, New York City College of Technology, we maybe out of the 30 people who graduated, maybe 10 of us are still in the field at best. So that's a very small number to satisfy the demand of the industry today. And so that's really what drives the shortage of labor. The next one is obviously the cost. Because there's such a shortage of labor, scarcity creates increase in cost. So that's very expensive for a lot of smaller labs, especially to afford some of these technicians who are whose salaries are going to be significantly higher because of shortage. And then to feed into the next section, which is a lot of big companies, big corporations, big dental companies are able to afford to pay these higher salaries to technicians, which really puts smaller labs and other operations kind of at a maybe minor disadvantage. So they don't have the access to that talent and labor that they need to grow. And the next one, which is my personal favorite because it's a very interesting subject, it's a very complex subject, is many industry veterans are going to be retiring in the next 5 to 10 years. So we're going to see this huge shortage of labor in the market where we actually need it the most. So that's why it's important for us to get all their knowledge as much as possible. These are very experienced certified technicians or just technicians who've worked in the industry for 30 or even 40 years, who carry tremendous amount of analog knowledge of old school, of that traditional fundamental and anatomic, morphological, occlusal knowledge that a lot of people from my generation really need to absorb and accept as such a strong foundation for building on the digital platform. So that's a very interesting variable that we're going to be seeing developing over the next few years. The next one, the second aspect besides labor, is obviously equipment, right? So what do you need to be able to produce all these things today in a lab? You need milling units, you need 3D printers, and you need design software. So this is the kind of like today's labs really have, a manufacturing department and a design department. That's really what composes today's labs. And then within each one of these departments, you need experts in particular fields to really produce a fine product. So, in order to provide those high quality FDA approved dental restorations, labs have to invest in latest generation milling units, right? And they can range from $40,000, all the way to $250,000 for something like a Haas, going from a roll into a Haas. Or you can have 3D printers. They can range from $15,000 to like $50,000 on a lease scale, and then on a lease model. And then you have obviously all the design software, whether it's 3Shape, Exocad, Dental Wings, whichever one you use. By the time you add up all the modules that each one of these pieces of software includes, that can add up anywhere from $3,500 on the low end all the way up to tens of thousands of dollars of design fee of licensing fees just to get all those modules working. So that's a very significant investment in today's labs. And years ago, if you were to start a lab, you would consider different machines to be able to start your business, and now you have to consider all of this. And so we can see all those dollar signs flying, right? It's very expensive. And so hiring a new team member requires expensive recruiting and training. This is where I want to talk to you about how you can take that return on investment concept and how can outsourcing designs and manufacturing really you can get your return on your investment. And if you were to do things in-house versus outsourcing, all the different costs that you need to consider to see if it makes sense for you to do so. So for instance, we have cost of education, labor, and talent, right? It's expensive recruiting and training. You have to train these employees for your particular business. They need a special knowledge and expertise that you could just not hire on your own. And so even if they don't have the ability, a particular center to solve your problem, they have a network of specialists that they can connect to do a lot of problem solving, to work with you. This is what we see here at Aurora as well, where we have all these different labs that are kind of don't have the skills, don't have people on staff to solve sometimes quite easy, but sometimes quite complex problems for their cases. And this is we, as a larger network, can kind of jump in and kind of solve it right there on the spot, and it brings a tremendous value for them. A design center like the Schein Prosthetic Service, they can bring a tremendous value by being able to push through it and design case on a technical level that solves a lot of problems that the smaller labs are kind of struggling with. And so that's definitely a return on investment. And that network of specialists is just a great, valuable tool. Then we have the other three sections, right? Reducing operational risk, new opportunities, and controlled use of resources. So you need to create a formula. I break down the cost to steps, right? You have steps for design, repair, labor, and then you need to take advantage of additional work for seasonal and temporary and new projects. So sometimes a lab is getting a lot of extra work during summer or winter or a particular month, and for you to have the ability to offload some of that work so that your operation doesn't get interrupted is very beneficial. And for it not to get interrupted, you need to pair with the right milling and design center that will make sure that the quality that you're selling maintains its integrity. Otherwise, the quality chain breaks. That's my word of the day, that the quality chain breaks. We'll talk about quality chains. And you're reducing operational risk, right? If the employee leaves, you can have somebody quit on you. You don't want to be, especially if you have short staff or very minimum staff, you don't want to be scrambling to produce that case, right? You want to have the ability to quickly go and work with your outsourcing company to kind of have that uninterrupted workflow. And then we have things that can happen that are rare, but they can still happen, such as natural disasters where your machinery shuts down or part of your facility shuts down. And again, not having that interruption and being able to outsource is definitely something to consider. So when you outsource, you're converting fixed labor costs into variable costs, meaning that you only pay for services you consume. So when you're slow, you're not outsourcing, but you're not paying someone's salary to just sit there and do nothing. So if you're a lab that kind of has this kind of significant workflow fluctuation, outsourcing is probably something that you should closely look at to consider how you can tie it in into your fluctuations, how you can tie in outsourcing into your fluctuations. And then the next one we have control cash flow, real estate and plant costs, and control cash flow again. It's all about that. It's launching a new product, freeing up some of your resources to launch a new product is beneficial. So if you have a crown and bridge department, but now you're really planning to get into digital dentures, you want to be able to outsource some of that crown and bridge work so you can devote your time to developing the proper digital denture workflow, the proper product that you're going to be launching soon onto the market. And so freeing up some of those resources will allow you to do that. And of course, not having to invest in rapid changing technologies, right? If companies are constantly investing in the latest and the greatest every few years. So you wouldn't have to worry about any of those costs simply by outsourcing. And then the next one would be lower maintaining current prices. So if you are able to compete and maintain your prices because you're outsourcing, because you've taken care of that fluctuating cost, now you're actually still staying relevant in the market and competing with some of the bigger guys. This was an example for me when I was working. I was able to compete with much larger labs because I created a protocol where some of these offerings that I wasn't able to produce on my own, I outsourced. I created a pricing model that worked, and I was basically competing on par with other much larger labs who had a much higher overhead cost. And of course, some of the basics, if you're not producing in-house, your maintenance is less, your real estate cost is less, your utilities, your operating costs, everything kind of reduces itself. Again, you need to see where you stand, what your current setup is, what your plan is to grow, and sort of like take all that into account and see if any one of these aspects could be affecting your business or be beneficial to implement. And here we have a very interesting chart. We kind of broke down here at Aurora, how much does it cost to actually create some of these restorations. So we took a full contour zirconia crown made out of Zerlux material, and we kind of broke everything down. So here you can see direct labor and wages, which is one of the highest costs at $19 an hour. We have, based on how many units a person can do in a day, that ends up being, $7.53 a unit. Then we talk about overhead costs, right? You have indirect labor, fixed costs. These are the things such as rent, utilities, space, licensing, fees for repairs when a machine goes down. And then the next one would be very interesting, which a lot of labs don't consider when they purchase a lot of machinery, is depreciation cost. So when you purchase a new piece of equipment every year, its value depreciates. Now, if you're a smart investor, you're going to use that depreciation deduction to kind of save up money so that in a few years, you can actually purchase a newer version, a faster, better version of that machine to upgrade your system. So, that depreciation cost is a very important factor. And I don't think a lot of labs realize that once they purchased a lot of this machinery, that every single year they're losing value. So if you're outsourcing, you really don't have to deal with any of those things. Then we have obviously the cost of the disc, the material, $2.30 a unit. And we have packaging, freight cost, shipping, all that stuff. Ends up being, $27.19 a unit. And then what we have is net margin per unit. It ends up being, $37.76. So that's really how the pricing model works. If after this presentation, anybody wants a copy of this breakdown to see if you can kind of punch in your numbers to see how your costs affect your production, we're more than happy to share it, and we'll be able to distribute that as well. The next one, we break down even more steps. They go into production of a single crown, right? Scanning the model, designing the model, setting up the discs for nesting. And then you have things like creating codes for milling. That's a CAM strategy. Then milling the actual disc, then taking the disc out, removing it off the sprues, polishing it, doing quality control of what came out of the milling. Then we talk about, we can talk about finishing. That's, how you're going to be finishing that restoration. And then final quality control, packaging, and then shipping it. So there's a lot of little steps that go in there. By the time we break down all the costs, we came up with $7.53 based on our labor costs. How long does it take to do a particular step? And that's what we incorporate into our pricing. The next thing I would like to discuss is, since we talk about all these things and every lab is differently structured and set up, is you have to consider yourself, are you a full service lab? Because in today's market, with so many fluctuations and changes and such easy availability to a quality design center or milling center, there's really no reason for you to just be a one particular specialized lab. You can really find a lot of value in being a full service lab. So if I have any advice to give, is, are you a full service lab? Are you an all-inclusive lab? And I believe you should always try to give a buffet of choices to your dentists, which just makes your lab really, really valuable to them, because dentists like a one-stop shop. They don't want to be jumping from different labs, even though sometimes they like to do it for different reasons. But all in all, we find that they do want to have a partner, a lab partner they can commit to, and they can really provide them a full comprehensive service. And so if you don't have the ability to do some of those things in-house, outsourcing, designs, and manufacturing, it's really going to bring it all together for you to offer a comprehensive package to your dentist. Well, you should be, right? That's my advice. So here I would like to talk a little bit about what sort of restorations you should consider. And then if you're not offering them, what are the benefits? And then what would it entail in producing some of these in-house versus outsourcing them? So if we have something like clear aligners, flexible RPD frameworks, surgical guides, models, dentures, screw-retained PMMA restorations. So if you talk about clear aligners, they're very time consuming. They require qualified orthodontic technicians to design them. They also require, after the design process, sets of 30, even 40 models, so you can create proper trays, and then require rapid prototyping for printing, all of that. So it's a very time consuming, it's a very, very labor intensive process. If you were to outsource that design and the manufacturing, You can simply incorporate it into your offerings and just have it work like clockwork, right? That's what we've seen a few labs do already to increase their revenue, where they've found the right partner for outsourcing and manufacturing, and then they just simply took those clear aligners, which is a big deal now. A lot of them are offering them, and just basically running them through their business, doing the quality control, setting up the parameters with the manufacturing and design centers, and have it run quite smoothly. So it's a great revenue source that we've seen with labs kind of increase their revenue. The second one is RPD frameworks, the flexible physically partials. Those have been really popular because it's a really great alternative to offer to your dentists who are maybe used to doing traditional partial dentures, metal partial dentures, and this will allow them for better aesthetics for their patients with more comfort, and that's a great alternative for a lot of the cases that we've seen, and we've seen really good success with those. It's a really great material. Surgical guides, that's my favorite subject. Surgical guides is, a lot of people look at surgical guides as a great tool, as a great revenue source, right? Oh, we can just make surgical guides and sell them, and there's other businesses who do that, and they do sell them, and that's a business model that I guess makes sense for some. But what I've seen from my experience and working with others is that surgical guide is a tool to work with the dentist to get the new account and to really sell the provisional that goes with the surgical guide and the final restoration. It's really a gateway into you opening up this possibility, this revenue to work with the dentist, so that through the surgical guide, you will provide that provisional and final restorations. And they're usually, reserved for full arch reconstruction cases. So the benefit of offering surgical guide, just to be able to get the account who is really looking for a full zirconia hybrid lab, is a must, right? They don't want to be jumping, doing different places. And then if you work with a design center like Schein Prosthetic Center, you will be getting basically a full package, right? The guide gets designed, the data transfers over to the provisional, the data transfers over to the final. So you also have this like traceability and the tracking of the case. It gives a comprehensive digital package that you can always store and save. The next one, obviously, 3D models. If you're not doing 3D models today, you definitely should. We've seen great results with 3D models in terms of accuracy. There is no stone expansion involved. There was a lot of skepticism with 3D models simply because there's so many different types of 3D models. They have different resolutions and different stereolithography technologies that are implemented in producing those models. But we exclusively use carbon here, for example, at Aurora, and we've seen that the accuracy of those models has just been supreme and on par with stone models, and even sometimes even better. The next one is digital dentures, right? Digital dentures is an interesting subject. There's a lot of existing denture labs. There's labs who don't do dentures at all, who would like to get into it, and the digital seems like a great way to do it. Digital dentures has been, with Lucitone material that we work on, it's been an interesting experience. They've been extremely accurate when it comes to fitting. A lot of technicians are giving us feedback that the fitting on these dentures is great. There was a big concern for a while that how are they going to be relined, because you want to have the flexibility to reline the digital dentures versus just remilling it. And so that's been working out great with the Lucitone material. This is the one we've done recently where we actually try to break it multiple times, and we worked on aesthetics. They're done with Dentsply IPN 3D teeth, and it's been really great. I see personally the benefit for a lot of denture labs, and what I've seen is a lot of denture labs are slowly doing digital dentures. So maybe if 80% of their business is still traditional dentures, 20% is digital. As they're getting comfortable with the technology and the outcomes and the processes that the dentist needs to follow now, they're kind of slowly increasing that percentage. And I believe it's going to take some time, but it's definitely going in the right direction. So they're also very time consuming to design, which we will touch on later. So definitely something to consider. So how do you establish a good relationship with the milling center, right? I mentioned before that I was able to establish really good parameters, clear communication between what's needed in terms of quality, design, and parameters with my design center and then manufacturing center as well. And so that's really the key. If enough time is spent initially on communication, on having the ability to talk to your design center about what you really need, and once those parameters are set and you have a dedicated team of people working for you, with you on your cases, you have a perfect workflow that basically just runs itself like clockwork. But a lot of labs are not really maybe spending enough time to spend that initial, investment on spending that extra time or a few days or weeks to set up those parameters to iron out everything out of the equation so that their stuff gets produced, their products get produced adequately. So we have communication. Through that communication, you dictate your parameters and preferences, and then once everything works like clockwork, you have that fixed cost and growth, right? You know how much it's going to cost you every single time when you do that case with the manufacturer, and now you can build your business model after that. And so how do you overcome those challenges, right? Well, on one hand, you have the dental lab on the left, and on the other hand, you have the milling center and the design center. And that's the quality chain that I always talk about. If each one of these parties doesn't do their job, the quality chain breaks, it just doesn't work, right? You can have the greatest design with the failed manufacturing or vice versa. And if the dental lab never communicates their preferences correctly, the quality chain also breaks because nothing gets produced properly. So they really have to work together as a partner and really look at the milling center and the design center as truly your partner that's simply off-site. But you're going to see later, we're going to touch on Schein's prosthetic design services. You can build a model where that partner really works very closely with you, almost to the equivalent of being your own employees. So we will touch on that later. So that's it, right? You found your design center, your milling center, problem solved, I'm out. Well, not quite, not so fast. There's a lot of considerations that you must take into choosing the right milling or design center. So when it comes to, for instance, designing, what do we say number one issue is? Quality and talent, right? Getting the talent gives you the quality. So having access to a skilled and talented team of designers and technicians is the most powerful tool you can have. So not all the design centers are made the same. So having the ability to discuss those complex cases with them is important. Having certified technicians of their team is also important. Knowing that they're capable and willing to solve problems for you is also important, because sometimes the lab doesn't really have the technical aptitude or is not really familiar with how the process works. And so having the team that's going to pick that up for them and solve that problem for them is really important. And not a lot of design centers offer that. And trust me, we've tried many and we work with many, and we know what the strengths and weaknesses of others. And then having the team who understands the complexities of the aesthetics, of the occlusion, of the facial cutbacks, of porcelain support, everything that goes into fundamentals of dental technology is all part of that. And then, of course, the given things like the steady turnaround times, but obviously not using the speed to sacrifice the quality, so hitting that happy medium, but definitely important turnaround times. And so here, for instance, we have, that aesthetics, right? The lower anterior case where it looked great, it was manufactured terrifically, but it turned out that those incisal edges, lower incisal edges, are kind of misaligned, so it doesn't really look that great. So we can't really use that. So that's out of the window. The next one, if the connectors are not designed adequately, well, we can't really use that because that's going to break. So we milled it right, but the connectors weren't designed correctly. So that's out of the window. We can't use that. Minimum thickness requirements. Are the design centers following the thickness requirements for a particular material, or everything is just being shuffled through just to get the volume out? So in this case, it was, and so we can't really use that. And then in a case like this, when you see this denture, there's several aspects to consider, right? It was 3D printed tissue and the teeth as part of the bridge. And so everything was manufactured great, but now that we start to really pay close attention, that 6 to 11 aspect, we see that the contour is completely rolled in, especially when compared to the buccal corridor of the posterior teeth. And then we have the interdental papilla that are really not on the same level, so that really it's not going to look uniform and great. And so at the end of the day, we decide we can't really use that either. So we just wasted all this time manufacturing things that weren't designed correctly. So these are the things that I believe are important, that the little details that need to be ironed out, and to see if actually your design center can deliver on those. Then we have an example of great designs, but poor manufacturing. Uh, Thankfully, here at Aurora, we try to do our best to really manufacture things at higher volumes, honestly, but also at great quality. And we spend a lot of time on quality control. And when things don't work out because they weren't made right, we suffer. As I'm sure other partners, other of our competitors or partners suffer as well, but we certainly do suffer when things don't work out. So here we have an example of a great design of a lower partial, flexible partial, very poor milling with a lot of flash, a lot of leftover. We have an example, so we can't use that. So that's out the window. Now we have a beautifully designed full arch restoration for zirconia hybrid. The milling, wasn't adequate, and it caused the chip that basically in this case will require the remilling of the entire disc. So that's a huge waste of resources and time. So we can't use that. So that's out the window. Then we have the chip margin. Obviously, that's one of the most common things that you're ever going to see from a design center. Margins are extremely important. They seal the preparation. They allow for properly designed margins allow for very minimal bacterial growth. So even to this day, their integrity does not change with digital. It just becomes even more important. But we can't use that one. Here we have an example of a PMMA denture that was designed with a lot of detail, which I wasn't able to show here, but it had plenty of detail. But unfortunately, poor manufacturing of this particular denture caused it to look very bland, very flush, very non-interesting, and with basically no tissue contour on the UGA. So that's really something that we cannot use. And then the overall cleanliness of the products that you get from your manufacturing center. It's important. You don't want to be spending time sandblasting for hours and cleaning up stuff, like sprues and leftover zirconia powder that you don't have to. That's a waste for you. So that's what I think is important to consider when choosing the right manufacturing center. All these little details. And then that leads me into the Henry Schein Prosthetic Design Services, right? Everything we talked about so far is to give you an idea of what to look for. I would like to talk about them, tell you what they offer, and why I think it's a very interesting and attractive service for you. But also, you have to consider everything else that we previously talked about to see how that could potentially fit into your structure and into your business. So, for instance, all designs are completed overnight within 24 hours. So that's a great for someone like us at Aurora, in our manufacturing center. That's a huge benefit, or any other lab out there. Now, obviously, they offer rush designs as well. Then, a very interesting thing that I haven't seen from actually no design centers out there is that they can give you a customized output, right? So if you like to mill at 6 in the morning in your lab, well, then they're going to provide you with a batch of designs every day at 6 in the morning. Or maybe you're a lab that likes to mill a case as soon as it comes in, as soon as it's done, as soon as it's ready. So having that flexibility is the equivalent of having your own person in the lab that's fully adapted to your workflow. And labs operate completely differently. So having the ability to customize that, definitely beneficial. And then we have their comprehensive state-of-the-art platform. This is their online portal that's also been streamlined to be extremely user-friendly. We also have a portal at Aurora, and I can tell you that a lot of customers that we're dealing with, it's a mixed bag, right? Some of them really like the use of the portal. Some of them complain that it's too complicated. Some of them don't complain. but I can tell you overall, it's important for people to be able to take a whole bunch of files that they just worked on and throw it onto the platform in a very simplified, unified, streamlined way, and to have a single platform where they can track all that. And I believe that the Henry Schein service does provide that. And so here we have an example, for instance, of how you can just take your files, drag and drop, and they kind of go in like this horizontal fashion. This is very useful to have this kind of portal because you have very good visibility, so you don't have to reload a new page for every single case. This has always been a preferred platform for myself. Others might prefer something different, but I like to have the visibility of everything that I've uploaded and kind of like choose the materials on the fly and just send them to production. So on this platform, obviously, you can communicate, you can get your invoices, you can, download your older cases, you can 3D preview video enables clients to review designs directly from their portal. You can communicate via WhatsApp, email, directly through the portal. And then the interesting part is the files are actually kept for 7 years. So that's also another thing that I haven't seen in the market, which gives you as a lab quite a bit of flexibility and reliability so that, 5 years down the road, which is usually what we've seen labs warranty their work for, you can actually just retrieve that file and it just goes back into production before the patient with a broken tooth even shows up at the dentist's office. So having that sort of like reliability is great. Then we have designated technical design team. Now, this is what I mentioned earlier. It's sort of like having your own lab that kind of works off-site. So if you're a large enough lab or milling center, you provide a certain amount of volume, they designate basically a small cell within their organization that just works exclusively in your cases. So you will know those technicians, you will know their skill, they will know your preferences. So that quality chain will virtually never break because there's not going to be that fluctuation of reintroducing new designers into your workflow because you've already had this communication established between them. So that's great. Scan validation is a great clinical tool, which I will touch on in a few slides, but this will be actually an added value for you as a lab to the dentist, and I will speak about it a bit later. Premium design options, that's obviously it's almost like the way I look at it is like a two-tier system. For regular designs, you're gonna get great service, but for really those high demanding aesthetic designs, you're gonna get that access to that premium service that costs a little bit more but provides excellent quality that's with a team that's trained by the American Academy of Cosmetic Dentistry, credentialed technicians. So this is like that second tier that's like really, really high-end work. So depending on your workflow, you'll have the flexibility to scale. I want to do this case here, send it this way, send it this way. So you will not have that fluctuation in quality. And so that's a great option. Then scan validation, which I mentioned earlier. So think of it this way. The patient goes into the dentist office, dentist does an intraoral scan and sends it out. Patient goes home, your lab, you get the scan 2 days later, and you say, Doc, this scan is no good. I need you to reschedule the patient. I really can't work with this. And he goes, oh, now you tell me what's going on. I don't like this. This is going to cost you money. So the fine people at Henry Schein have figured out, well, why don't we have a scan validation tool, right? So while the patient is in the chair, why don't we go ahead and sort of send that file directly to be verified, to be validated, so that while the patient is sitting there within 10-15 minutes, you have the ability to get the feedback from the design center to tell you this is good, patient can go home, or this isn't good, I need you to capture a little bit more of the mesial buccal margin, or something like that along those lines. Now, you as a lab offering this tool to the dentist is another gateway for you to get that case back to you, right? So it brings value on both sides, basically, and especially during these times during COVID, where patients are scheduled 3-4 months ahead because the dentist can only take so many patients in. Having them not reschedule patients because of a bad scan, it saves them a ton of time, a ton of chair time, a ton of money. So that value is really what you can bring to them and say, hey, If you work with me, I can provide scan validation for you so that when that case comes to me, you know it's going to get done 100% of the time correctly. So great tool. And the second one, which is the Smile Creator, that's the one that I personally work with. When I worked in the clinical environment, I've seen patients come in, they're really not sure if they're ready for this big treatment. You know, it's a lot of money, this and that. Then while they're sitting there, Smile Creator jumps in. You go ahead and you do a full smile design. You can use different types of software, depends on what you use. And then you put your treatment plan together with 2 photos of before and after what the patient could look like. And from what I've seen, I'm going to say roughly 80% of the time, you know, it works. It works great. The patient goes home, sleeps on it, looks at the picture, and he's like, "Man, I really like how this looks. Fine, I'm going to go for it." So that tool, that service that you could provide to the dentist increases their bottom line. Forget the fact that you're going to be getting that case to work on. That's obviously a given benefit. But for them to know that, for the dentist to know that they can get that service through you, is a great tool. So huge, like some of these scan validation, Smile Creator, 2 clinical tools that you can really, services that you can give to your dentist if you were to use the Henry Schein's prosthetic services. The next one I wanted to mention, to touch on real quickly, is the copy denture. What we've seen really is this huge influx of people who have patients who have worn dentures for a long time. And so the denture breaks, needs to be relined, da 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 da. The material is falling apart, the acrylic's no good, but they really like how the denture looks. So the copy denture is really, if you work with a design center that supports that workflow like they do, you basically reline the denture, or you can do a pickup so you can get the intaglio surface. That denture gets scanned, split into 2 files, redesigned so that it's produced with the latest and greatest material in 3D printing. And basically, the patient gets a great fitting denture that looks just like the old thing. So for those labs who are dental labs, I believe it's a great tool for them to offer to the dentist. And the turnaround time on something like that is extremely quick because there's no design time really spent on some of these dentures because you're really copying the existing shape, unless of course they want to tweak a couple of things, but more often than not, that's not the case. So obviously they're economical, they fit better, and vertical dimension and aesthetics are maintained. So that's a big benefit. So other things that you can do through the design center, and this, when you look at all these products, just think about it. If this is something that you currently offer, if this is something that you have the ability to design in-house, maybe you just have a designer that does crown and bridge and a couple of implants, but they can't design partials and splints and things like that. So obviously we have the bite guards, right? We have the clear aligners, we have surgical guides, we have the full arch diagnostic wax ups, and then the Smile Creator, the smile design tool. Then we have the night guards, custom trays, digital dentures, full arch hybrids, custom abutments, screw retain bridges, partial frameworks, and I can keep going. There's a lot more there that's offered. Now, just to pivot a little bit, going back to digital dentures, I just wanted to give you here a couple of slides where you can really see how many steps are involved in designing these digital dentures. They're very time consuming, even for designers, let alone if you actually produce them manually. But the overall design, the establishing of occlusal plane, the bite rim, the midline, the lateral excursions, and then after that, post-processing them so they can, with those blue supports bars that you see, post-processing them so they can actually be printed on a carbon printer, which is the only one approved for Lucitone, is a very specific process, and it works. And those supports really give the material integrity. So during printing, so those dentures are really important in the market today. And then having the ability to design upper and lower denture, just the upper or just the lower, might seem like a given. So what's the problem with that? Well, actually, in reality, a lot of this different softwares don't give you that functionality. There's certain software only works if you're doing upper and lower at the same time, and that's it. Some other modules on the market only work if you can only do one arch at a time. You have to have the opposing dentition. So with prosthetic design center, there's really no such fluctuation. So you don't have to worry about which system is supported or what I have to do with it. That it really works. So you can really just go and be a one-stop shop for digital dentures. So very labor intensive, very rewarding when they do work out, when we 3D print them, when we finish them, because they really are great quality dentures. And then here, we're just mentioning some of the facial cutbacks, some of the inlays, custom abutments or split files in this case, and of course the full arch reconstructions. So what do they have? They have hundreds of highly skilled designers. They actually partner with dental educations throughout the world to actually hire some of the best designers and kind of bring them into their team, and they become experts on particular subjects. And so they have those clinical and rush services, and obviously the scaling to thousands of units a day. So you don't really have to worry about, oh, how many cases can you take from me? Oh, I can only take 100 cases from you, which some of the design centers do. They kind of like had this system where they kind of section that off. You only get 100 units from us a day, and that's all you can get. And then, of course, relationship managers, right? These are the people that I mentioned that as part of the communication, that really build that relationship with you and make sure that what you told them really gets transferred in the real world through those designs and manufacturing. And we obviously mentioned the 7 years of data storage, and that really creates that seamless triangulation workflow between them. So really great experience that we've had. And so at the end, what I could say is, it's really up to you how you're going to choose your path for success. I've given you a couple of things to think about, a couple of things that we like, we don't like, but overall, we're not telling you to do something specific or choose a specific center or service. We gave you examples and all these different aspects in the beginning that I mentioned that are really important. What's really important for you and how you can take some of this data and implement it into your business to see how you can grow. And then once you decide that you do want to grow, like what should I consider and what's important for me to make the right step. So whichever path you choose, left or right, you're gonna succeed hopefully, and I wish that you do. So yeah, so thank you very much. That's I believe everything I had to say, but obviously at this point we can open the presentation to some questions if you had. I'll be more than happy to answer them for you.
Thank you so much, Milos. That was really informative. As of right now, it looks like we did not have any questions come through in the chat. So we can certainly close here. If anybody does have any follow-up questions, please feel free to send us an email at zahn@henryschein.com. Otherwise, I hope everybody has a great afternoon. And thanks again, Milos. This was fantastic.
All right, perfect. Thank you everyone for joining, and I hope to see you soon. And we're going to do a lot more of these. So I appreciate it. Thanks.